All right, so now that we've looked at technical mount, how to establish the position, and how to use it to take the back, we'll start to look at back control itself. Usually in classes, we'll spend a considerable amount of time looking at hand fighting strategies, talking about diagonal control, etc. Again, as with some things, these are a little bit difficult to explain directly over video. It's something that you really have to practice with a training partner. There's no specific technique to hand fighting. There's some systems, of course, but there's no specific technique. They're so situational that you really have to get in there with a training partner and work on them in a live setting. Preferably with progressive resistance to get good at understanding how to isolate the limbs. So many beginners will actually find that controlling the back is more difficult for them than controlling the mount position. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't focus on developing back control skills. It just means that we need a reliable way of maintaining control and getting back to a dominant position if our partner does manage to escape our back control, which will happen frequently as a beginner. I find escaping back control is far easier as a beginner. And then there's this kind of inflection point where you hit the top of the curve, and then suddenly it becomes so much better to have back control once you understand how to control it and how to attack efficiently. And I usually find that that'll happen around blue belt, halfway through blue belt-ish, that you'll finally lock on to back control and really understand how diagonal control works and how to properly keep somebody in control from the back. So we're going to initially look here at a way to counter my partner's back escape by putting them back into the chair sit position and just immediately retaking the back. And if that's not working for us, we end up in a mount position anyway with a strong claw grip where we could immediately start to take or attack a head and arm choke. All right, so my partner's got defensive grips on the choking arm, so I don't have an immediate choke threat. He's going to clear that bottom hip and start to escape his hips out. And right here's my cue. As soon as he clears that bottom hip, I don't have back control anymore. So I need to start thinking about coming back up to the mount. Right? I'm going to swing that left leg over top of my partner, maintaining my seatbelt grip, and come back up to mount position. But look at how I fire my left arm through, right about here, to a claw grip. So I'm reaching up, taking a grip around my partner's back, and I land with a dominant head and arm control on my partner. This means that I could just stay in mount and start to attack a head and arm choke, or just maintain control of the position if I wanted. However, in this case, I'm going to use that grip with the claw to slide my knee up above the shoulders, just like we talked about last week from technical mount. Right? I'm going to upgrade this grip. This is optional. Right? You could just use the claw grip, as I'll show in a second, but I'm going to upgrade that back to that Kimura grip and then perform my chair sit just like we did last week. Right? This sets me back into the back control position, and I'm ready to immediately start attacking again. Especially useful as a beginner when you find that people are escaping your back control consistently. So you'll notice here how I just used the claw grip and immediately chair sit to the back. Just as viable of an option to reestablish back control in my partner. All right, so we're going to start with the collar choke. So I'm going to open the lapel with the underhooking arm. This is going to be my assisting arm. I stretch that choking arm forward, slide the thumb in nice and deep until the first 2 or 3 inches of my forearm bone are in contact with the artery on that side of my partner's neck. You'll also notice that I use that assisting underhook hand to take the slack out of the collar. All right, this is a super important detail. So thumb nice and deep, take all the slack out of the collar. My forearm is in contact with my partner's artery, and I'm using the kind of bony part of my forearm. So I don't want to have the back of my arm, the soft part of the back of my arm, or the bottom of my forearm against the neck. I really want it to be the first 2 or 3 inches of the forearm bone against the neck. So then from here, I want to reach across and find that far lapel. Now, in this case, I was kind of having a hard time finding it. But when I do, I'm going to take the slack out by pulling straight downwards. All right, all the slack's out of the system now. I'm going to keep the elbow in contact with my partner's chest and start to draw it up the chest as if I want to tuck it behind my partner's shoulder. right? Typically, I'm not going to make it up and over top of the shoulder before I get the tap from my partner. So I can run into situations where my partner is hand fighting in such a way that it's difficult to get control of the lapels. In this case, rear naked choke will do. So I've overemphasized the movement a little bit, but I want to show you guys that I'm trying to get that right bicep in good contact with the side of my partner's neck. And I'm trying to get my elbow in line with my partner's chin, just as shown here. All right, now I'm going to remove the underhook. All right, this is sometimes good to do during a transition as they roll and are trying to escape. I place the back of my hand on the back of my partner's head. My right hand grabs the bicep and I hug everything in nice and tight. Okay, I bring my head. You'll notice my head connecting to the back of my partner's. That's so it's almost impossible for my partner to reach up and peel away that left hand. Right? If he's able to get a hold of the left hand, he can start to disassemble my rear naked choke. So from here to finish, a lot of people recommend taking a nice deep breath to take up even more space. My elbows are going to start to move together, and I'm going to start to put a little bit of pressure on the back of my partner's head with the left hand and my head to tuck his chin towards his chest. So another attack from the back that I feel like beginners should get familiar with is transitioning to the arm lock from back control. So say we get into a situation where one or two things are happening. Either I'm not having luck with the choke because everybody knows that the choke is coming, so they're prepared to defend it. Or I start to lose that spinal alignment, right? Like we talked about in last week's video. And I feel like my partner's starting to create a gap and they're starting to facilitate some upper body rotation. This is a good cue for me to look for the arm lock. So I'm actually going to help my partner out with that misalignment, making us perpendicular, right? You'll notice that I start by forcing my partner's head out of the way. I keep that underhook to start. This is a strong grip to keep me connected. Push that head out of the way, rotate myself perpendicular, and pass the leg over the head. All right, now I'm ready to start to extend and attack the arm lock. Notice how I like that grip of cupping my partner's wrist with the crook of my elbow as opposed to grabbing the fingers. That's just my default because people will oftentimes lock their fingers together, and I like to keep things as tight to my body as possible. If I reach out and I'm using my hands, I'm losing a little bit of the mechanical advantage that's available to me if I keep things nice and tight to my chest. That way I can use my core and my whole body to break grips open. So my default is to hook through and use the crook of my elbow to connect to my partner's wrist. If they're being very stubborn with their grip for the armbar and they've really locked their fingers together in a tight S grip, I'll lean my body weight towards their head, thinking of making an L shape across my body or across my chest with their arm. That's usually a very effective way of breaking that S grip. And at that point, I would extend myself perpendicular with my partner, pinch the knees nice and tight together, make sure I'm controlling the wrist with the thumb pointing in the opposite direction, perpendicular to my hips, and then slowly hipping into the arm lock finish. If my partner's turning their thumb around side to side, all I'm looking to do is take my assisting hand there, the one that's not holding onto the wrist, turning that thumb up towards the ceiling by grabbing the fleshy part of the thumb, or I shouldn't even say up to the ceiling, but perpendicular to my hips, depending on how my hips are pointed. And then that should allow me to get that simple finish.